Welcome into another edition of the Fantasy Authority podcast. We are back again. We are on to week 7 because we are a forward-thinking podcast. We try to not live in the past here. But anyways, we are back again for another edition of the show. We were absentee on Sunday with waivers. We had some stuff come up. My dad's birthday, sometimes you got to fit family life in there, fantasy football, not everyone understands. But anyway, so we are back again. I am Kevin Steele. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyRat13. You can join. I'm always joined by my wonderful, yet tends to hedge a lot, Cody Kutzer. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. Not gonna lie, I had a bit of an annoying weekend. Saturday, hit a deer with my car, so that sucked. And then on Sunday, you just have like one of those feelings about a game. So I've been doing a lot of betting with on the FanDuel Sportsbook app since it's legal in PA now. Dude, I just had this feeling that the Jets were just gonna outright beat the Cowboys. But I didn't have the cojones to put any money on it, so I didn't do anything there. And then I've been dipping my toes in the GPP waters a little bit. Luckily, I hit on a GPP that brought me to like even on the week. So I hit on GPP, lost in cash. So like my whole weekend was messed up. But Penn State won. Now moved into, I think we're 7 in the AP poll now. Have a big game with Michigan this weekend. So, like you said, we're forward thinking. Not gonna dwell on that too much. I'm just gonna bitch about it right now for a little bit, and then now we're on to week 7, man. I hope you had a better weekend than I did with Papa Wrath, man.
I did. It was a good weekend. Well, my son had a tournament this weekend, and that did not go well. But the other team was very Bush League, and they were crowding the plate the whole time. And so my son actually, just I guess after the game, told us that he just beamed one of the kids on purpose. Like I'm like, oh, we don't really do that. It's not real professional, But sometimes you got to do it, son. Sometimes you got to back them up,
Yep.
And, but no, that was fun. And then I'd had a great day on Sunday. Like 6X again, was all over the dig. Chubb loved Robbie Anderson, had so much Robbie Anderson. So that was good. And then, the redraft life was solid. Had another 200 points again. It's, I think, 3 weeks in a row that I've scored over 200 points. So, anyways, so enough about me and my, humble brag over here, about how great things are, but no one wants to hear that. So anyways, let's we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about tonight. We are going to do, I think we keep trying to come up with different ways to do a buy sell. Like we pretty much talk about it every week, but then we find different ways to incorporate it. And Now this week we're going to do it again, but this week we're going to kind of again be forward thinking and look at some of the players who have really favorable matchups or favorable schedules rest of season, especially the fantasy playoffs, which are not that far away. We are heading into week 7, so we really only have about 6 or 7 weeks left until we get there. It'll be here very quickly. So,
yeah, man.
We're about to get into the meat and the potatoes, as they say, of the bye week schedules. They're going to start coming up where a lot of the elite teams will start getting their buys. And, now we're going to find out how good your teams are and how much depth you have. You may have a solid – there's a lot of teams that I've seen a lot of teams that have pretty solid starting rotations, but then their bench is god-awful. And it's going to be tough to piece that together. But I think now is a really good time to start buying some of these players, especially for the players that have really favorable schedules. So we'll be talking about that. We're also going to talk about just some of our favorite plays this week. We're not really going to hit on the studs because, you're pretty much probably going to be starting those guys anyways. No reason to tell you to play Saquon Barkley this week against the Cardinals. You're not really helping anybody there. So what we are going to talk about more is just some more, not necessarily flex plays, but just players that maybe you might be making decisions with this week on who to start or who to sit. So we are going to hit on that. We do have a question already from, could you have any longer of a name? Julian 813-49525. I need to start 2. Who should I start? Marlon Mack, Melvin Gordon, Devin Singletary, or Frank Gore?
I will go Marlon Mack and Frank Gore for the with the matchups. It doesn't really matter to me the format here. You know what I mean? I don't think either of these guys are a lot more valuable in PPR versus standard or anything like that. Marlon Mack has been playing pretty well. Obviously has that good offensive line, and then Frank Gore gets Miami. I really don't think we have to touch on that. So you are you playing Melvin? How are you feeling about Melvin so far since his return?
I think we definitely. For me, I would definitely be Marlon Mack, and then I probably would have to go Melvin Gordon. I just can't see a scenario because now with Devin Singletary back, like how does that factor into Frank Gore's role moving forward? We know he's not utilized much at all as a pass catcher either, so I think that really limits him. Now he doesn't say if this is PPR or standard, so I think that changes a little bit. But I think I'd have to go Melvin Gordon. I think this is his 3rd week back, so. I feel like each week they're going to get him more and more involved in the offense. I mean, he has not looked good, but it's hard to really blame either due to the fact that, I mean, he is kind of getting acclimated back into this offense. And, I mean, they got smoked. I mean, the final score doesn't really do it justice of how bad the Chargers kind of got beat down until the very end, until they came back. I mean, that was against Delvin Hodges, the Steelers' 3rd-string quarterback. Now, don't get me wrong, it was mostly Duck the entire time. It was all Duck. Like we would have got hammered if we would have made it a drinking game off as many times as the broadcast booth talked about that by the end of the game.
Did you know he was a state champ in duck calling? Did
yes.
you know that?
No, I didn't, but I do know now. Thank you, Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth for your enlightening us on all that. We wouldn't have been able to make it our rest of our lives without knowing that Delvin Hodges is good at duck calling. So anyway, like I thought that was pretty surprising with how that game kind of turned out. Like I felt like it was going to be sort of low scoring, but the Chargers are just a train wreck right now. Like they are 2-4, and it's funny because every year, all the analysts, as they say, are always kind of just all over the Chargers every year, and everyone loves the Chargers, and then they just always fall flat on their face. So there's still time to turn them around, but it's not looking good. But regardless, I think I'd have to go Marlon Mack and Melvin Gordon. It is tough to bench Frank Gore going against Miami, but this doesn't seem like a game that they really need. I mean, I don't think I think with Devin Singletary back, I think that hurts Frank Gore's value. And I think he kind of goes back to being, kind of what he was before this. So unless he finds the end zone, I think it's game over. So I think I would have to go Melvin Gordon just based purely off his upside. And I think that they really want to try to get him going. And then, in this match, and then with Marlon Mack, I don't think you can bench him just because of his opportunity share that he's getting in that offense. So for me, I think it would have to be Marlon Mack and Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame him for playing Melvin. The only thing that worries me is that Chargers offensive line is really banged up, and as mediocre and meh as the Titans have been, their defense has been pretty solid this year. They are playing at Tennessee as well. I mean, I wouldn't blame anybody for playing Melvin Gordon by any means. At this point, though, I tend to roll matchups a little bit more. And even with Singletary being back, I don't think he's going to take away that many touches. And I think there is, like you were saying, if he doesn't get in the end zone, you're probably not looking at, you're looking at maybe 9-10 points at most. But I think there's a really solid chance he gets in the end zone going against the junior squad that is the Miami Dolphins.
Just a correction. The game is in London, actually. So it's the 8:30 in the morning.
Either way, traveling.
You both are. But anyways, another question. I think this is what this is. Start Ezekiel Elliott, Gordon, or Gore. I guess 2 of those. I think we're maybe asking. There's definitely Zeke and Melvin Gordon for me. I can't hedge now.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was just chiming in on Julian's social security number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. Yeah.
So I guess start Ezekiel Elliott was like the I'm Ron Burgundy question mark.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely start Ezekiel Elliott this, yeah.
Yeah, he had what, like 30 touches? 30
We
some
finally
touches.
yeah, we finally get we finally get Ezekiel Elliott breakout week, after weeks of just kind of meh, you know.
Yeah, and with with Cooper possibly being out, they had to get him involved more in the passing game. So that obviously bodes well for Zeke.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, now that, whenever the Cowboys aren't apparently playing, the three worst teams in football, and, now all of a sudden they have to play real competition, like some things happen. But, hey, it is what it is. I think some of it's Jason Garrett. I think it's time for him to go there. I think it's been time for him to go in Dallas. And hopefully, like, Jerry Jones is, like, just as loyal as they come. But, so, it is what it is. But,
It's just so weird how at the beginning, like the offense is even like structured differently now. Like you said, maybe Garrett has a big part to play in that, but I remember week one, everyone was talking about how much motion they were using, play action, and everything, and they don't really seem to be doing that now. Like their whole like offensive philosophy has changed. It's like Garrett couldn't help himself. Like dude, I don't know what's going on with that, but it just seems to be a completely different offense than we like. Obviously, competition notwithstanding, it just seems to be a differently run offense versus those first couple weeks.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree. I don't know. I think they'll get it figured out and they'll kind of turn things around a little bit, but they're definitely not looking like the Super Bowl contender that we thought they were going to be. And right now, honestly, like I think if you were going to pick a team in the NFC, it might really damn well be the Saints, and mainly because they're doing this with with Teddy Bridgewater, and Drew Brees is going to be back in the next couple of weeks. Sounds like he's 2 weeks away, and like I did not think that they were going to be what are they 5-1? I think because they haven't lost with Teddy Bridgewater, correct?
Teddy Two Gloves, baby.
Yeah, and so like I did not see this. I thought maybe they would at least lose, at least 2 or 3 of these games that he's played. So, hats off to them. And so, like I said, once he's back, like, I don't know, this team becomes pretty scary, especially as well as the defense has played. But 5-0. This is probably the hardest question we may ever get because this is a loaded wide receiver core here. And we can only pick 2, apparently, of DJ Shark, Edelman, Diggs, T.Y. Hilton, and Hopkins. Where are you going?
Oh, boy. Yeah, that one is rough. Oh, dude, it's so hard. Give me Chark and Hopkins, I think.
This is tough. I mean, I could make it. I think like Hopkins, you lock in. I think even though Hopkins, we haven't had that big boom week from him in since I think week 1 or 2, but I just don't think you can sit him. But
yeah,
Hilton is I believe out. The Colts are at home, correct?
Yeah, they're playing the Texans, so that's a game they're squaring off.
As somebody in our chat here has alluded, T.Y. owns Houston, which is absolutely correct. Like that's what I was gonna say. T.Y. Hilton crushes the Texans,
and I feel like D-Hop always has good games against the Colts as well.
Yeah, so it's tough to sit him, but also like I think I have DJ Shark as a top 20 wide receiver this week too. So because they're playing Cincinnati, which is a tremendous matchup.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how do you sit him? And then Diggs coming off that big game against Philly. Now, are you chasing points with everything with him? So I could see if you wanted to sit him, but man, it's tough just because I feel like this passing offense is finally maybe starting to get going here. But I don't know. It's definitely Hopkins for me, and then I feel like I think you have to play T.Y.
Yeah, it's definitely Hopkins, and it's either T.Y. or Chark. I don't think you can go wrong between those two.
Is there any flex options, I guess? Or do you have a flex? No
Doesn't.
flex?
Yeah.
Because he says his running backs are Zeke and David Johnson. Like, this dude crushed this. I don't even know how that was possible. Is this how size of the league is this? Or did maybe some trades or something? I don't know. But this is like this just disgusting team. Disgusting.
Well, he said there he's in a 6-team league. I don't know if he's saying that like tongue in cheek or if that's actually a 6-team league. Because a 6-team league would make sense, but that's also an absurdly small league. Jesus. And he has Godwin and Juju. Yeah, this has to be literally a 6-team league.
Yeah.
There's no other way this makes sense.
You know how hard that would be, though? Like, how tilting it would be to be in. So, like, I think some people would be like, oh, man, a 16 league, that must be easy. No. Like, I think this would be hard because, like, you really have to make real decisions every week on your on who you're going to start and sit because, like, this is not easy whatsoever to come up with, like, who you'd want to start and who you'd want to sit.
Dude, it'd basically be like DFS, but without the salaries.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like normally in a 12-team league, your starters, your studs are kind of your studs, right? And you're pretty much starting them most weeks, depending on, I mean, unless it's just like a completely terrible matchup or some injuries to a quarterback or something like that, where it would dictate that. But for the most part, you're starting Saquon Barkley every game. You're starting Zeke Elliott every game. Like, you're not ever thinking thinking against that. But with this, like, this would be so tough. Like, to try to have to sit there because you'd be tilting your face off that, man, I sat T.Y. Hilton for DJ Shark or whatever, right? But that, like, process wise, like, it made sense, right? For whatever reason, whether it's target share, whatever you're looking at, because I think you would have to play it somewhat like a little bit like a DFS mindset and really dig deep into your research. So even though that, like I said, that, maybe people will be like, oh, it must be easy to play in a league like that. I don't think so. Like, this would be tough.
Yeah, for sure. I was just pulling up TY's splits. So in the games where he's played Houston, he has 122 targets. So this is out of 14 games. He has 122 targets, 76 catches, over 1,400 yards, and 9 touchdowns.
No, he's crushed. Yeah, he's crushed Houston in his career. So
he's averaging 103 yards per game against Houston in those 14 games.
I'd be curious. You might look if you have time to see, take a look at whenever Jacoby Brissett started last for the Colts and see what his numbers were then.
I'm not sure against with Jacoby specifically, but I know he had a solid year last year, not last year, but whenever he did have Jacoby for 15 games, he posted solid numbers. I think like 900 some yards receiving. His target share and everything else was really high too. That was one of the reasons why when people were down on TY after Luck retired out of nowhere. Which is kind of weird, man. I've kind of forgotten about that at this point, 7 weeks in, how Andrew Luck literally was just like, oh, hey guys, I'm done. But yeah, I was higher on TY coming into this year.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is definitely a solid matchup to exploit here with him. So we do have another question from KJ925. I have Golladay, Hollywood, Tevin, Boyd, Hunter, Tyrell. He needs 3.
Not Tyrell. Seems like he might not even play, so that should be an easy one to get rid of. Tyler Boyd for sure. I would play. I think last week was a little bit of a fluke. He just didn't get the targets for some reason. It was kind of weird. Auden Tate took over for the receiving game. So Boyd for sure. Golladay for sure. Who would be your third out of there? Assuming you're rolling with those two, you're going to go with Hunter for your third.
I would definitely go Golladay and Boyd. their 2 target shares in their offense are so strong that it's hard to really pass up. You look at like Tyler Boyd, I believe he has like a 27% target share in that offense. I think he leads the team in air yards now. So it's tough to not play Tyler Boyd no matter. And I believe, like I said, they play Jacksonville, and we know that we're going to know Jalen Ramsey now. And so he plays a lot in the slot. So like, I definitely would want to play those 2. Hollywood is, Marquise Brown is interesting because he is just up there in air yards. Sans last week because he didn't play, but before that, like he was he's been in such an intriguing GP or DFS play as well because of that. But he just hasn't really found he just hasn't really connected with Lamar Jackson since the first couple of really big weeks that he had. And so I think he's definitely somebody you're shooting for pure upside with, because he doesn't really give you a great floor. But I don't know. Like, I think I would rather have Hunter Henry, to be honest with you, and play him, because I think that this is a really solid matchup for them. I'm not that scared of Tennessee's defense, especially in London. We see a lot of crazy things in London games, and so because there's really no true home team. Which, I mean, let's face it, the Chargers never have a home game anyway, because every single week the opposing team fills their stadium. So, anyways, but I just think that connection is real. We know that Philip Rivers always seems to lean on his tight end, and not a lot of people really thought that. I mean, I think a lot of people sat Hunter Henry last week heading into that week, into that game, not knowing how much he was going to play and everything else, and he really just went off. I mean, he was the offense for the Chargers last week. So,
yeah. And I didn't realize Tevin Coleman, they get the Redskins. So
yeah, I think though with him though it's tough too because of Matt Breida and his involvement in that offense as well.
Yeah,
and then they also they have like a true committee with Wilson and Raheem Mostert, and so it's just so many different players.
Yeah. Give me Boyd, Golladay, and Hunter Henry.
These questions just keep flying in from I'm going to ruin this name. It's Jared Bolduck. 10-man standard. Traded Hilton, AJ, and Fuller for OBJ, Boyd, and Hollywood. I think I won, right? Yes, 100%. Just played.
Crushed. That was an easy one. Yeah, it was nice to have that easy one thrown in there after the past couple.
No, for sure. Okay, so I really appreciate the questions. We can keep them coming if you guys want to, but let's move a little forward here. Let's hit up some news and notes real quick. Sounds like, speaking of that Tennessee game, Ryan Tannehill will be the starter this week for the Titans. He is replacing Marcus Mariota. Do you think this helps the offense here, this passing offense? Do you think this is a boost for that offense?
I mean, it certainly can't hurt, right? Like, to me, like, they're both basically the same. Like, they have those couple of games a year where like they show some flashes. You're like, oh, okay, like maybe there's some promise here, and then they just fall flat on their face the next game. I mean, maybe Tannehill will be a little more consistent versus the up and down nature of Mariota, but it's still going to be a run first offense, even with that offensive line struggling right now. I mean, I guess it boosts them a little bit, but not enough that I'm going to run out and either try and make a trade or immediately pick. You know what I mean? If, say, A.J. Brown is on the waiver, Corey Davis is on your waiver wire, it's not going to cause me to run out and, really want to grab either of those guys.
I may be in the minority here, but I've never really thought Marcus Mariota was all that good of a quarterback ever to begin with. And so it's tough for me to really buy into him. And I actually think I don't know if this is the spot for Ryan Tannehill to be a better quarterback, but I've always thought Ryan Tannehill is a little bit better than what some people gave him credit for. Like, I don't think he's a terrific quarterback, but I think he can be above average in the right situation. And he's very similar to Mariota in a lot of ways. Like, he is an athletic quarterback, actually, was a converted wide receiver to quarterback. And so I don't know, like, I think and like I said, in the right situation, I think this very well could boost the offense and could make somebody like Corey Davis or or AJ Brown viable on a week-to-week basis, which we haven't seen. So, like, I would be intrigued to, depending on if I had the bench space, to add somebody like an AJ Brown who's widely available. I think he's owned like 12% of leagues or something like that. We've seen loose weeks from him. I think it's going to be harder to predict on when that could be, because I don't think he's somebody that's going to command a large target share, especially with Delaney Walker and Corey Davis still in the offense. But I mean, if you have Corey Davis and you've kind of just probably never been able to start him, like maybe now you get a little intrigued with him. I'd have to see how things play out. Maybe he's a buy low candidate. I'm not saying that Ryan Tannehill is going to come in and this offense is just going to take off and they're going to be a prolific offense or anything, but I don't think that this offense can get any worse just because Mariota has just been a train wreck. And this is probably his last year in Tennessee, I'd have to imagine. I don't think he's going to be brought back. So, I'm at least a little intrigued to see what Tannehill can do. I think this is the exact reason they brought him in, because they were not sold on Mariota. And here we are. So, like I said, like I wouldn't like you said, run out of my way to go add them, but at the same time, I do think it's something to monitor. So, past that, the Saints signed Zeus, Zach Zenner. This man almost won me a GPP a few years ago with the Lions. But anyways, he signs with the Saints with Alvin Kamara dealing with the knee and ankle injuries. Latavius Murray is 50% owned in Yahoo League, which is egregious because Latavius Murray should be owned more than that. I know Latavius Murray really hasn't been utilized all that much, but this last week he did get more run, and I believe he did find the end zone last week. So, Latavius Murray should not be owned or that under-owned right now. And I think there should be some concern with Alvin Kamara because they do not want to get him hurt. And it wouldn't shock me to see them sit him this week. Or at the very least, I think you very well could see a much more reduced workload and see much more of a Latavius Murray type game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. You mentioned at the beginning of the show we didn't have the waiver podcast, but we did have the waiver article, and I threw Latavius Murray in there because he should have been more owned to begin with. But then you're looking at the fact of they've been doing really well without Breeze. Like they have to be ahead in that in their division. There's really no reason for them to just continue to run Kamara out there with a deep playoff run in mind toward the end of the year. But yeah, man, if you're listening to this right now and your waivers either haven't processed or he's still sitting out there for whatever reason, like I said, 49% owned available in Yahoo leagues, I would go pick him up. The matchup against Chicago isn't great, but if Kamara's looking at a reduced workload, over the next couple of weeks, Latavius Murray is still going to have value, even if it's only like at a flex level. While Kamara is working back to full health.
I will say this is probably always some level of concern with Alvin Kamara because, I know some people are going to say, oh, well, he's a smaller back. Like, I don't think that's so much it, but like he's just never been somebody throughout his entire career that's ever been given like a hefty workload throughout an entire season, even going back to college. So I don't know for the rest of the season, we kind of see him go back or maybe more of a split like we saw similarly with Mark Ingram back when he was here. So I don't know if we start to see that rest of the way where it kind of balances itself out a little bit to where he's not getting ridiculous numbers. Because I think before this, he was getting like 70, 80% of the snaps. And I think you could see that go back down to maybe a 50, 60% kind of thing here. So, if you held on to Latavius Murray, good for you because you should have. If he is somehow available, yes, I'd be adding him as quickly as I possibly could because I think that you're going to see him more involved in this offense moving forward. Yep. So, Zach Zenner doesn't really do anything that I don't think that really matters. But I do think Latavius is certainly somebody who could really have a pretty big impact for teams moving forward. At the very least, I think if you own him, I think you could use him as a flex option as we get into some of these bigger bye weeks that we have coming up for some of these teams. So, the other one was Tyrell Williams is dealing with plantar fasciitis, and Coach Gruden claims it hasn't gotten better. Is it Zay season?
I think so, man. he's another one who's widely available. And now this one I get a little bit more because he's not in that sexy of an offense, and he hasn't, he hasn't really been doing much. His rookie year was abysmal. It had to be one of the worst rookie years for a receiver ever. But who else is there outside of Waller? You know what I mean? So Zay Jones, 4% owned in Yahoo leagues right now. He definitely needs to be on your bench if you have the room to add him.
This feels like one of those situations where we see quite often where like we have the information early of what's about to happen, and because it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where Zay Jones doesn't command a large target share in this offense.
Yep.
Especially coming out the bye, he was able to kind of get a little bit of extra time to get involved, to get himself familiarized with this offense coming off the bye, and
yeah, that's huge.
So I think that'll help. And then without Tyrell, I mean, it's basically Darren Waller, who actually got a contract extension today. They signed him through 2023, which is good for him.
Yep.
But I mean, he's been a monster this year. But like past that, it's him and Josh Jacobs really as the only other option. So I mean, Zay Jones could easily see 10 targets, especially. I believe this game is on the road. I'm almost positive this game is on the road against Green Bay. And so a game where they likely are going to have to, stay aggressive if they want to beat Green Bay, especially in Green Bay. Yeah, I mean, I think Zay Jones, this could be one we're talking about on Sunday night for the waiver show of, we told you so. So I just feel like he's somebody that I would at least want to preemptive add.
Yep, absolutely. He was someone I've always been intrigued by his skill set coming out of East Carolina, I think he came out of. Like I said, that his rookie year with Buffalo was abysmal. Last year, he actually had a pretty solid year, especially toward the end of the year with Josh Allen. But now he's going. He has the opportunity, and that's what we're always chasing in fantasy football. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. Like I don't think he's gonna necessarily light it up, but those bye week gauntlets are coming up. Injuries are going to keep happening. So having Zay Jones as a wide receiver 4, 5 on your, on your roster, you could definitely be in a worse situation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think he's going to come in and just light up the scoreboard or anything for you and start dropping, 20-point week performances. But I think he's a solid somebody you could probably count on 10 to 12 points, something on that range. I mean, it's not great, but somebody if you're landing on a flex option, something like that, I think you can. I always thought he profiled as a terrific slot wide receiver.
Yep.
Being a team second or third wide receiver option, like especially on a decent offense. I don't know if this is it with Oakland, but. I don't know. I think we'll see, but I think for now, with how little is there and the cupboard is bare, as they say, in that in Oakland right now, it's Hunter Renfrow. I mean, there's just not a lot. So yeah, I think Zay Jones is certainly somebody that I at least would like to take a flyer on. So, our man KJ 925 has another question: Fitzmagic gunslinging or play Buffalo defense? I'm all about Buffalo's defense this week. I don't care what quarter is, especially with Ryan Fitzpatrick back there. Yeah, maybe he finds the magic, but I wouldn't have bet it against this defense. The Buffalo Bills defense has shut down great quarterback plays this year, and I would, and we know that Phil Fitzmagic is capable of throwing 5 picks in the game. So I'm all about Buffalo's D.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you have a better streaming option than Fitzpatrick to go with, but you got to play Buffalo's defense if you're able to.
All right. So last one we have, Marcus Peters obviously was traded to Baltimore. We had Jalen Ramsey shortly after that trade to LA. This is kind of a jarring move that Marcus Peters has been traded again, all under his rookie deal. He was traded from KC to LA, and now he's been traded to LA to Baltimore. I don't and honestly, all the way back his days in college, he had issues, and that's why he got kicked off the team in Washington because he didn't get along with the coaching staff there. So I don't know. We'll see what happens here. I think that this could end up being a 1-year rental, and they don't re-sign him. And then because I know he really wants to play on the West Coast, he's from Oakland, so I don't know if he goes back and play and signs with the West Coast team after this because this is his final year of his deal. But the Jalen Ramsey trade, like at first when it happened, I was tilting my face off because as a Chiefs fan, I was really hoping that Brett Veach would go out and acquire him because this Kansas City defense needs pretty much just about anything it can get right now because it's been pretty bad as far as this defense is concerned. But after I see what they gave up 2 first-round picks. And I'm not saying that Jalen Ramsey's not worth 2 first-round picks, but at the same time, that's some pretty heavy draft capital to invest in. And really, in my opinion, I don't know how great of a trade this was for LA because this is not LA's problem. Like, I don't think anybody's like, man, if they just had a defense, this Rams team would be going places. Like, that's not what anybody's saying. So, like, I guess maybe it's a more better long-term move. But the way they're going about this and like just not caring about their draft capital is kind of mind-blowing because now they have so much money now wrapped up and 4 or 5 players. I mean, between Aaron Donald, between Jared Goff, who they just gave a big extension to,
Gurley,
and now they're going to have to. I mean, they just give all this up. They're going to have to pay Jalen Ramsey, and this dude is going to get paid big money.
Yeah.
And so he's definitely going to get over $100 million. And so they're going to have so much money invested in this top 5. Like, they're going to have no depth. And the sad thing is, like, you say, okay, well, we'll just fill in with, like, through the draft. But they're trading all their draft capital. So, like, yeah. I don't know. Like, I think this is a move that's going to blow up in their face because right now the Rams may not even make the playoffs. They're 3-3, trailing behind Seattle and San Francisco, who are 5-0. And then you have the Seahawks, who are, 5-1? Yeah, because Seattle hasn't had their bye week yet. So, yeah, I don't know. This was a mind-blowing. This really was something to look back on and just kind of laugh at the Rams for doing. I guess I somewhat get it because they have to fill that stadium, especially with the new stadium opening next year, so they need star power here. But I don't know. I don't see how this works out for them in the long run, especially as bad as Jared Goff looks right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like if you get a shutdown corner, then all of a sudden your offensive line is going to play better, and now Gurley's knee is going to go back to full health. So it is odd, and I think it was Evan Silva who pointed this out. I'm not going to try and claim this as an original thought on my part, but if you look at the receivers they're going against in that division, it's not like there's a stud X receiver they have to shut down. You know what I mean? So like that also, no, obviously, different playoff runs, that's going to probably matter a little bit more. But as far as the division goes, I mean, there's no stud outside receiver that Jalen Ramsey is going to be tasked with shutting down. And with Marcus Peters, what I like with that is it kind of maybe can bring back some of that Steeler Ravens kind of rivalry, kind of, you know what I mean, bring back the villain kind of play like it's been lacking the past couple of years because, man, that used to be such a fun game to watch twice a year, and it's been, you know what I mean, there's no Suggs, no Ray Lewis, you know what I mean, nobody like that, Hines Ward, they're all gone. So as a Steeler fan, I kind of like bringing the, you know what I mean, that villain back, and Marcus Peters is definitely known to run his mouth, and the gumbo comment from last year with Sean Payton was one of my favorites. So maybe that'll bring back some of that edge and chippiness to that rivalry.
I think for me, the reason why LA made this move and they made it so quickly, I think it all really had to do with Aqib Talib. That there's something to be said because last year when Talib was hurt is whenever that you saw Marcus Peters just get absolutely roasted. Like, I don't think that he is a dominant shutdown, number 1 type corner. I think he's a terrific number 2 corner, and he has to be kind of reeled in because he's a ball hawk, but he can easily get roasted on multiple occasions. And when he played for the Chiefs, like, you would see it a lot. Like, he would make these terrific plays. He would come up and make these plays, these highlight plays, but then also you'd see in the same game where he just gets absolutely torched. And then when things aren't going well for him, if you don't have any sort of like veteran leadership, because like it would always have to be like Justin Houston or Eric Berry back in that, whenever he played for the Chiefs, that had to come in and like settle him down a little bit. And then, I think last year was kind of the same thing. Like he's not somebody I think you want like leading your room. So I think this is a decent fit for him because with Jimmy Smith there and Marlon Humphrey and everything else, I think that this is not a terrible fit for them. But so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays out, or even if they re-sign him. It's not like they gave up a ton to acquire him. So it'll be fun to see how this thing plays out here. But anyways, so why don't we get into the, some of the bigger issues here, or some of the main portion of this show, and jump right in. We're going to start with some of our week 7 top plays. Why don't we start off? We'll start with quarterback. Who is your, and again, we're not talking about any of the studs. I'm not going to tell you that Pat Mahomes or whomever, Lamar Jackson is a great play this week. Like you're probably playing them anyways. We're more kind of going off the reservation here a little bit on some of these plays that we want to go with. So who is your quarterback top play this week?
Yeah, like you said, not talking about the top 10 plays or anything like that. So I'm going to go back to Gardner Minshew. After, he finally had a down week last week. I don't even think he threw for 200 yards, but he's traveling to Cincy, they've been a defense we wanted to target all year anyway, and now they are without Drake Kirkpatrick and William Jackson. So I think this could be a game where we see Gardner Minshew kind of come back, throw for over 250 yards and a couple of touchdowns. So he's a play I really like at quarterback for week 7. Who are you rolling with?
I really like Daniel Jones going against Arizona. I think this game has potential to be somewhat of a shootout here. Daniel Jones, as we know, has last week. I mean, I think it was even though he threw multiple interceptions, I think it was 3 interceptions against the Patriots, like on the road. Like, I don't know. I think there was still things to be impressed with coming away from that game, especially as a rookie. But I think now he gets to come back this week. They're going to get Saquon back, who's been practicing in full. Evan Ingram is back this week. It doesn't sound like Sterling Shepard will be back, but they're going to – this is about as I mean, if you look at the weapons that he had last week, right, it was Darius Slayton and Cody Latimer, and those were and Rhett Ellison, were his, and the running backs were players none of us have ever heard of, and I'm not even sure if they really exist. But they held their own in that game last week. Now you get to play Arizona, which is a much easier opponent, and at home. So I don't know. I think Daniel Jones is a great play. Even moving forward, I think that there's going to be a lot of boom weeks for him coming up, and I think it starts here. We know he's able to get out of the pocket and utilize his legs. So I just think that Daniel Jones makes a lot of sense. So if he's available out there, or I just think that he's a great start. I have him actually as a QB1 this week, so I really like Daniel Jones in this matchup against Arizona, and even more so, just the fact that they try to run so many plays there with Arizona, so that just keeps the opposing usually gives more opportunity to the opposing offense because how quickly they run their offense. So I do like Daniel Jones this week.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that at the end there. That was going to be the 2 cents I threw in, is just the back and forth nature of what that game could be. And before we move on to running back, we had a question from Jared B again in the chat that pertains to quarterback. He's asking Goff or Josh Allen, and he also has Minshew available. Where are you going there?
This one's a tough one because Jared Goff has been a train wreck, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
But this is a really good matchup for him. The Falcons have been an absolute nightmare on defense, especially once they lost Keanu Neal. And with this being inside the dome, I think this is a great week to target Brandon Cooks as well, because we know Brandon Cooks plays his speed plays well inside of a dome. So much like when he played in New Orleans. So like as bad as Jared Goff has been, like this feels like if there was a game to get this offense back on track, this is it. And so I don't I would have to go Jared Goff, even though I think you're not going to feel great doing it because of how bad he's been. If he can't play well this week and go out and throw, and give you 20, 25, 30 fantasy points, I don't know what week it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I get the hesitation with Goff and possibly thinking about Allen or Minshew here. But like you said, the matchup is ripe. The issue with Goff has been the offensive line, and he's awful whenever there's pressure, and Atlanta should not be able to get pressure no matter what kind of offense they're going up against. So give me Goff here. But like I said, I get the hesitation, but this should easily be a 300-yard, 3-touchdown game for Jared Goff.
I agree. I mean, it's not. I mean, obviously, Josh Allen has a terrific matchup too going against Miami, but I don't think that game offers the same sort of upside in terms of just raw volume and everything else. Because I think this is a game that Buffalo can win pretty handedly. So,
right.
Yeah, I would much rather have Jared Goff in what should be a back and forth game, which is going to be interesting because of Jalen Ramsey. Now you have sort of what I think that he is going to be plastered to Julio Jones. So. I think that is this should be a pretty interesting one to break down, especially later in the week, kind of looking at everything. Because I think Calvin Ridley is somebody that I would definitely want to fire up. Austin Hooper obviously has just been a monster this year. He's actually the tight end 1 through 6 weeks. And then you also have Mohamed Sanu, I think makes some sense because I think you're going to see Jalen Ramsey travel everywhere Julio goes.
Yeah. Yep. As long as he's healthy and that wasn't just a ploy to not have to play for the Jags. So as long as he's healthy, that kind of seems what the early indications are, is that they're just going to use him in the shadows. So like you said, that will be interesting to look back and see how he's utilized early on in this defense.
Yeah. So I think he was already back at practice today. Crazy. There with that all of a sudden he gets traded and all of a sudden that back just, oh man. Actually, you know what? I feel great now, boys. Let's get out there. Come on, let's go. So, anyways, all right. So let's move on to some running backs. Who are some running backs this week that you are excited to play in your lineups this week?
Yeah, I got 2 here. One we've already touched on a little bit, so I won't go too in depth there. But Frank Gore versus Miami. Like I said, the matchup just lines up really well for him. There should be a chance for him to see the end zone. There's really no reason to throw Singletary in there and give him 12, 15 touches right off the bat, especially coming back from that hamstring injury. The other one that I think is interesting and kind of a little off the radar, Royce Freeman going up against your Kansas City Chiefs. They just let Carlos Hyde just run up and down the field on him just this past week. That split between him and Lindsey. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at a running back, you want that running back to be the only one getting touches or at least 75% plus. But Freeman, dude, it's kind of weird this year. If you look at the targets and catches, like that role has kind of got reversed a little bit. I think Freeman has caught more passes than Lindsey on a handful of occasions. But this should kind of be a game where it would make sense where Denver wants to slow down the pace a little bit, keep Patty Mahomes and that offense off the field. So I think we could see a heavy dose of Freeman and Lindsey. I think people just in general are higher on Lindsey, so I'll go with Royce Freeman here as a non-stud Week 7 play.
Yeah, I don't hate that. It's the only thing tough with him is how much run does Philip Lindsay get as well. I think that's always the worry. But I definitely think that if you have a matchup where he finds the end zone, it's been well documented now that the Chiefs have been an absolute disaster with really stopping the run. They just made Carlos Hyde look like Saquon Barkley last week, and it's pretty bad, Actually, it's funny because heading into last week is like, you know what? We are committed to stopping the run this week. We're going back to basics. We are gonna be committed to stopping the run. And they went from giving up like 180 yards last week to actually doing worse and giving up like 193 rushing yards this past week. So, yeah, and this is exactly what Denver wants, right? Denver wants to run the ball, wants to play physical football, wants to, lean on their defense, and we'll see what the Chiefs are able to do because the Chiefs, this might be, in regular season, this could be like, I think this might be the first like must-win game that Patrick Mahomes has ever been in because not that like the season's over if they were to lose this game because of how bad the AFC West has been, but this is a game that they just need, right? Because after this week, it's crazy. Like, you want to know who the running backs they play after this week? We think this week's something. Next week, they play Sunday Night Football against the Packers at home, so Aaron Jones will be coming to town, who torched the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago. And then after that, you get Dalvin fucking Cook and the Vikings coming to town. So they better get something figured out real quick because Dalvin Cook might rush for 300 yards against them if they don't get this thing figured out.
Yeah, not having I think Chris Jones has been out, and you have some injuries on the D line, and just some other players not working out for you guys right now. But
yeah, so they lost Chris Jones. I think he'll be back next week. He won't play this week. Xavier Williams, their D tackle, is out, and then Anthony Hitchens, their middle linebacker, has been out too. So, though I think Hitchens is supposed to return this week. So, anyways, I think Royce Freeman's an interesting play if you own him. I think he's definitely a flex option this week. I think somebody maybe low end RB2, at least a flex option. So, for me this week, it's Josh Jacobs. I absolutely love Josh Jacobs this week. We finally saw him before their bye against Chicago. He had 26 carries. He was also targeted 4 times, had 143 yards and 2 touchdowns, like his true breakout game. Really his best game since week 1, where he had 113 total yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. He had not found the end zone in any of the other 3, which actually one of those against Kansas City, where he only had 9.9, and then he had 4.4, 12.8. And now this past week against Chicago, they really committed to him. And like I said, I mean, he really went off. This week they get Green Bay, where it somewhat scares you a little bit if they were to get behind. How much does that affect him? But Green Bay has been absolutely horrific against running backs as well. They've given up the 4th most fantasy points to the position. So I think Josh Jacobs and that pretty secure target or opportunity share that he gets, I think is really going to go a long way. So it's really hard for me to not to want to play some Josh Jacobs this week in this matchup.
Yeah, all that makes sense. They're the strength of that Packers defense is with the corners in the secondary. So again, it's just one of those scenarios where you would think the offense wants to slow the pace down, keep the opposing quarterback, in this case Rodgers instead of Pat Mahomes, keep him off the field. So if they continue to establish the run here, Jacobs is going to be on the receiving end of that because no other running back has really gotten carries. The only times we haven't seen Jacobs on the field has been in obvious passing situations. And that's the weird part, is that's part of his game. You know what I mean? Like if you see some of his college tape, he was running routes. It wasn't just dump offs and, swing passes or anything like that. So that if he starts getting incorporated into that a little bit more, he's going to make a lot of fantasy owners really happy.
Yeah, and if you look at some of his efficiency numbers as well, like they've been pretty solid. He ranks 12th in breakaway runs, 9th in evaded tackles with 33, and he's 4th in juke rate. So there is lots of like here in his profile. So at least so far this season. So yeah, I mean, I think he is somebody that you can definitely play on most weeks with confidence. I think among all the rookie running backs right now. I mean, he looks to be in the best situation just because of some of the other options. But I think we'll be talking about some of them here a little bit later. The other one, my other guy that I really like this week is Matt Breida. With him, like he's pretty safe and the opportunities that he's going to get, he's going to give you anywhere from 15 to 17 touches per week. And I think that this is another week that I think you can feel pretty confident in playing him going against Washington. So, like I said, in this matchup, I mean, San Francisco might have one of the best rushing attacks in the league, just in their overall balance and their ability to move the ball down the field. So I really like him this week. Again, I think he's a solid flex option going against Washington last week. He's had over 10 carries in every game this year, 15, 12, 14, 11, and 13. And he's seeing targets. He's had at least 3 targets in each of the last 3 weeks that he's played. So, again, I just think this is a pretty solid matchup for him and something that I would want to do. Though there is one thing I guess I would be a little bit nervous because his snap share isn't quite what you want to see, so it makes him a little bit risky. Though he is still getting the touches. So I think as long as that continues, and then the other thing, he's only seen 2 red zone carries all year. So I think that's a little concerning as well, that it's like he's just between the 20s type of runner right now. So, because he's only gotten 2 touchdowns all year. And I think those were both, I know the one was that long touchdown run that he had, and I believe the other one I think was a passing or receiving touchdown. So he's not getting many looks inside the red zone either. So those things are a little concerning. But as long as he continues to see at least a healthy, 3 to 5 targets per week, I think that still makes him very usable.
Yep, I agree. So you're looking at the matchup here, and just the fact, like you said, he's getting at least 10 carries every week. Probably a handful of targets as well. And even though he's not getting those red zone carries, we've seen it before, man. His breakaway ability, all he needs is one. So if you're looking at just a flex level play, like I'd be more than happy to plug Breida into that. So for wide receiver, let's move on to there. Kev, who are you looking at for wide receiver for your week 7 plays?
Yeah, we're going to have to monitor Amari Cooper because it does not seem like Amari Cooper is going to play this week. So I think that makes Michael Gallup just a slam dunk play. Right now, I have him as I think either number 12 or number 13 wide receiver this week in half point PPR. So I really like Michael Gallup. I think he's going to be peppered with targets here. And in a game that they kind of have to win. I mean, now they're 3-3. They are tied with Philly. And this thing could turn ugly pretty quickly if they're not able to turn this thing around. And this is not the team that they wanted to see at this point. As bad as things has been, they've lost their last 3 in a row. So, yeah, I think Michael Gallup is a fantastic play in this matchup because we know that Philly is fantastic against stopping the run. So I think this is a game that Dak's going to have to kind of air it out, and I think that makes Michael Gallup just an easy play this week. And I think he could easily clear, 12 targets this week.
Yeah, for sure. I love Gallup. I was really high on him coming into the year. And like you said, this is a big game for both teams. Philly is pretty stout against the run, and their secondary just gets roasted on a weekly basis. So how well Gallup will be able to perform as their number one, because they really don't like their drop off from Amari Cooper to Gallup isn't that great, but from Gallup to their wide receiver 2, that's really rough. You're looking at Cedric Wilson, I think. Tavon Austin was out there getting a bunch of receptions last week. So yeah, I love that call.
Yeah. So my other one, a couple of ones is Courtland Sutton against Kansas City. Courtland Sutton has definitely been Joe Flacco's favorite target this year. He's a big play threat. I think that's really where Kansas City struggles the most. So in a game that I still feel like the Kansas City should easily be able to win this game, and I think that they should be able to still be able to move the ball against this defense. So in a game where Joe Flacco is probably going to have to throw the ball more than he wants to, I think Courtland Sutton makes for a pretty interesting play. And then if you're looking for kind of a real dark throw, you're in a much deeper league, I think Allen Lazard is somebody that I would definitely want to take a look at here, or at least stash, because as we know, Devontae Adams sounds like he's still going to be out again this week against Oakland. And right now they just don't have a lot. MVS got banged up. And then Geronimo Allison, I believe, left with a concussion. So, I mean, Allen Lazard could actually be starting this week, undrafted rookie. And I think that he's somebody that, especially in this matchup against Oakland, that I think is somebody that at least intrigues me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're looking at the opportunity, and apparently, if you listen to anything post game or read any of the articles that came out afterward, apparently it was Aaron Rodgers who went up to the wide receivers coach and asked that Allen Lazard get in, and then he delivered with that touchdown catch. So definitely intriguing there. And they didn't practice today, but they still have to put out the practice reports, and none of their top 3 would have practiced, I guess, or however they estimate that. So I mean, Lazard could be stepping into a number 1 or number 2 role. So I like that. And dude, it just makes me so happy to see him playing well, because I'm a sucker for, hashtag team big wide receiver. And that goes with one of my plays. I really liked Allen Lazard coming out of college, and I also really liked Auden Tate. He would be, a deeper one, obviously, going up against Jacksonville. We already touched on that in their defense and losing Jalen Ramsey. So another one I'll talk about, Damiere Byrd, going up against the Giants. We've talked about this matchup a little bit already, but I think we're finally starting to see Kyler Murray unload the ball downfield a little bit more, and it's not just these 4 or 5 yard passes to Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald. Kingsbury came out today also and said that they're not going to play Christian Kirk until he's 100% healthy. So even though he had a limited practice today, and I think almost all last week as well, but he still didn't suit up. So if it's just Fitz, I mean, maybe we see a little bit of Trent Sherfield, some of the running backs taking some more targets, but Damiere Byrd caught, I think he had like 2 downfield passes. And against the Giants, they just have nothing in that secondary. So he could be a deeper name to target. And I know he was a hot waiver pickup, I think like week 3 or 4, after he had seen like 8 targets in back-to-back games. Then he got injured and dropped, so he's probably widely available on waivers as well. So for a deeper play, I like Damiere Byrd and Auden Tate.
I think it was a pretty solid. I think it's also worth mentioning, I don't think we really talked about it, but Patrick Peterson returns this week from suspension. So
yeah,
the Cardinals get a little extra help there in the secondary. But anyways, so let's just go ahead and jump into tight ends. Tight end you have here, I think, is an interesting one. Somebody who has finally kind of broken out a little bit. Has been decent the last 2 weeks after really kind of being quiet over the first couple of weeks. What about Jared Cook do you like this week, especially going in Chicago?
Yeah, I think if there's a place to attack Chicago, it is with the linebackers and coverage at the tight end position. He has 2 touchdowns back-to-back weeks, so 1 each week the past 2 weeks. If there's no Kamara, that's going to open up targets going around. Michael Thomas can only get so many. So I think we're going to see Jared Cook involved a little bit more. I mean, maybe Ted Ginn is like a GPP play. I wouldn't go anywhere near him in your redraft leagues. The usage is there, and they seem to want to keep things closer to the line of scrimmage for Teddy Two Gloves. So that's why I like Cook here. Because I mean, you're starting who you have at this point, right? Like tight end is such a dumpster fire to begin with. Jared Cook is someone who might be available on your waivers. So as a non-stud, non-obvious play, I like Cook.
Yeah, I mean, he has that upside too that I think you kind of look for. And since, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater doesn't really push the ball down the field, I think that, it's somewhere you definitely can go, and I don't hate it. My guy this week is Gerald Everett. Again, we talked about this matchup already with against the Falcons. Gerald Everett, the last 3 or 4 weeks has gotten more and more involved. Now, this past week, we didn't really see what, kind of what we were hoping to see. He kind of fell off a little bit because, the 2 weeks prior, he had played 58% of the snaps, 89% of the snaps, and he had run at least 40 routes. Now, this past week against San Francisco, he still played 58% of the snaps, but he only ran 13 routes. Now, he did still see 5 targets, so that was still encouraging that he's still seeing a pretty decent target share in the offense. So I think there's a lot to like, and I think this game is going to be much different than what we saw last week, where it was much more kind of a grinded out type of game against San Francisco, where this game is going to be much more wide open. So I think you see him run all more routes in this game. So again, like I really like Gerald Everett, and he's somebody, that is super athletic. And I think that they just continually trying to figure out ways to get the ball in his hands. And so I definitely like, Gerald Everett this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we also have to remember that I think this was McVay's first draft pick whenever he took over as head coach. So just looking at him, they claimed that this was going to be their Jordan Reed of the offense. So he's definitely an intriguing option. Let's move into the final segment of the show. We'll kind of go rapid fire here since we're already over an hour into the show. But what we're going to talk about is looking at favorable schedules for the rest of the season. Maybe some buy low options you guys can look at to really bolster your rosters as you're looking toward the playoffs and trying to make that deep run. So I'll start off here. Quarterback position. We already touched on him a little bit. He was my top play for the week, Gardner Minshew. So if you look at the rest of his schedule and who he's going to be facing, he only has to face 3 teams that are in the bottom half of fantasy points allowed to the QB position. So obviously the fewest of points. And if you look at PFF's coverage grades, he only faces 1 team that's in the top 10 for coverage grades, which is Tennessee. Now, obviously, there is the issue of Foles coming back. But I mean, even if that is the case, you're still going to be able to go pick up Nick Foles if they decide that's they're going to return to him as a starter. So I guess this could be basically whatever Jacksonville quarterback you have available to you. So Gardner Minshew is who I would be looking at for the rest of the season as far as a favorable schedule for quarterbacks. Kev, you have somebody who actually came to my mind right away, but then I also saw your tweet, so I kind of figured you were going this way. So talk about the quarterback you'd be targeting that has a favorable schedule the rest of the year. I keep fucking that up.
Mine is definitely Sam Darnold. And he is widely available. He is only owned in, I believe, 14% of Yahoo leagues and like 8% of ESPN leagues. Their schedule is just amazing, right? They face Jacksonville, Miami twice, New York Giants, Washington, Oakland, and Cincy over their next 7 games. Obviously this week they get New England. That's going to be a tough game, obviously, against one of the best defenses in the league. But once you get past this week, where nobody's going to want to add them this week, it's just as wide open. And I feel like you can almost run him out every single week. Like I don't think you're going to find better matchups for him for a quarterback the rest of the way. So I love Sam Darnold, and I really like this offense as a whole. Moving forward. So I think they're all a buy. If Sam Darnold's available, I would be running out the ground. I mean, unless you have like Pat Mahomes or somebody like Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, something like that. Even still, maybe you want to play some matchups with some of them. But, I think Sam Darnold for anybody else, or a Matt Ryan, something like that. Like if you're out here, if you have like a Jameis or quarterbacks like that, where maybe there's certain weeks where maybe you may not want to play them, then I think it makes a lot of sense to add a Sam Darnold who has just a dream schedule.
Yep, absolutely. Obviously, we're going to move on to the running back position. You already touched on. You could basically buy this entire offense. I did have Le'Veon Bell written down here. I'll talk about my other guy real quick, James Conner. They're going to be running. It seems like Rudolph is going to be back this week. They're expecting him to get to start, but the Pittsburgh offense, as far as what they're going to be facing, he's going to get Miami, Indianapolis, Rams. He gets the Browns twice, Bengals, Arizona. Then he does have the Bills thrown in there. Then he also gets the Jets. I think this offense is going to run through the run game. They're not going to ask their quarterbacks to do too much. So I like James Conner as a rest of the season bye. And he's had a couple okay games, but I think people are just low on this offense to begin with. So he might be somebody that you might be, especially with the bye week this week, maybe go look at the team who has James Conner and see if they're, see if they're hurting at the running back position. Maybe you can float them something, or even at wide receiver, and get James Conner in return.
Yeah, I definitely think he could. With him, I am somewhat concerned with his injuries that keeps popping up with him.
Yeah, that's fair.
He did have the quad injury, and I think he left with another one last week. So that's something to monitor. So I think that is something to at least keep in the back of your mind. But for me, one, you mentioned Le'Veon Bell again, definitely 100% an easy buy, depending on what you'd have to give up to acquire him. And then for me, I think David Montgomery is probably my favorite buy low candidate right now. He really hasn't popped off yet this year. Has no real big game on his resume. Over his first 5 weeks, he has 5.5 fans, 13.8, 11, 9.7, 10.6. Just hasn't really done a whole lot. He does have 2 touchdowns on the season, but his snap share kind of started trending up, and now the last 3 weeks has started to trend down. Now, some of that I think is games, the way the game script was going and stuff like that. But I think, that he is somebody that he has the 6th easiest schedule for running backs for the rest of the season. I think, even though this is somewhat, narrative, but I do think it matters a little bit, especially playing in Chicago. I think as the weather starts to turn colder and colder there, that you're going to start to see them give him more opportunities. And I feel like, do you really want to put the hands in Mitchell Trubisky? I don't know. We know Trubisky's actually sounds like he should be back this week. He practiced today. It sounds like that Matt Nagy said he is optimistic that Trubisky will return coming off their bye. So, I think David Montgomery is a very easy buy. When you watch them play, it's clear he is their best running back. And there's a lot of times I don't understand really what they're doing with him. Is because he'll rip off an 8, 9, 10-yard run. And then it's like, all right, no, get out of here. Hey, Mike Davis, hey, come here. You go in and run now. It just doesn't make sense with kind of what they're doing with them. So hopefully after the bye, they kind of regroup a little bit and they really start getting him the ball, because I think that he is definitely their most dynamic running back they have. And I think we start to see them utilize him more. And I do think that he is a terrific buy low right now, because I think a lot of people will give him up pretty cheap.
Yeah, you're not going to get any arguments out of me. Love David Montgomery coming in. He was my favorite running back in this class. I think for you dynasty leaguers out there, he could also be a nice buy low candidate as well there. Let's move on to receiver. We've already talked about the Rams offense a little bit, so I won't go super in depth with this one, like I said, especially since we're running a little long already. But Robert Woods, currently wide receiver 25, and that's a little surprising given his game log. So his fantasy points, half PPR, 12.6, 5.2, 7.3. He had that week where he went 13 for 164 in that crazy Tampa Bay game, put up 22.9. And then his last 2 games against Seattle and San Francisco, he hasn't gone over 8 points. Definitely not what we were expecting after his performance last year. But we already talked about Jared Goff and his issue being getting pressure in his face. They only have 3 teams in the top 10 in pass rush grades per Pro Football Focus for the rest of the season. So Robert Woods would be one that, you could look at to go there. The other one I'll talk about here, John Brown. 6 of his last 10 games are going to come against teams in the top 12 of fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers. He's obviously the apple of Josh Allen's eye, and it's never pretty with Josh Allen, but with somebody like John Brown, all you need is one. He's top 8 in market share of air yards and target share with 34 and 22%, getting close to 8 targets per game, and he is 13th in ADOT with in players that have over 30 targets. So John Brown would be what I'm looking at there. I mean, like I've said before a couple weeks, I like having one of those players that's a little more boom bust. You know what I mean? If you're looking across at your opponent, you're behind, they have a stacked team with a bunch of good matchups. I like having somebody like a John Brown or a Deshaun Jackson when they're healthy that you can just kind of throw in there, say YOLO, and hope for the best. Are there any receivers or any just passing situations in general that you're looking at, Kev?
For sure. I think there's a couple of different ways you could go here. I think it starts again. I mean, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but Robbie Anderson or Jamison Crowder, I think both of them are terrific options. Obviously, Robbie Anderson's tougher because of the kind of the big game he just came off of. So I think it's going to cost more. So maybe his window is a little bit closing, but depending on what you'd have to give up to acquire him. We've seen Robbie Anderson on multiple occasions put up solid wide receiver 2 numbers, and this was an offense that I thought low key had a chance to be very good. Now, things didn't really work out with the fact that for the Sam Darnold getting mono, which is obviously nothing anybody could really do about that. But so I definitely think that if you wanted to, obviously, Robbie Anderson too has that big play potential, but I think Jamison Crowder also is somebody in a PPR format that is seeing large target shares. We saw that week 1 where he had 17 ridiculous targets or something like that. It will be something to look at once Chris Herndon returns, who once he was able to return from suspension and quickly got hurt before even playing in a single game. So once he's back, I'll be, monitoring how that affects somebody like Jamison Crowder. But there's no denying that Sam Darnold has a strong connection with Jamison Crowder. So, he probably would be the much easier one to target and the much easier one to acquire at this point because of where Robbie Anderson's at. However, after Robbie Anderson likely gets shut down by Stephon Gilmore this week, I think he is a really easy somebody that you jump on because of this schedule, being forward-thinking, and looking at, who they have left on the schedule where no one's really going to be able to contain him. So, again, Robbie Anderson. Now, a couple that are all kind of off the radar, heading into this year, we all loved Dante Pettis, right? And we just started to see more and more, especially in training camp and then earlier in the year, where it looked like Dante Pettis really wasn't as big of a factor as we thought he was going to be. However, things have started to trend. I mean, really, I've kind of trend up slowly for him all year. If you look at his numbers, week 1 against Tampa Bay, he only played 3.4% of the snaps. And then after that, week 2, he played 47. Week 3, he played 37. Then in week 5, he played 65% of the snaps. Now, last week against LA, he had played 74% of the snaps. Same thing with routes. He won 11, 13, 18, 23. Everything seems to be sort of trending up with him. And I mean, he is somebody that has definitely been dropped by a lot of people, and I think that is somebody that's pretty interesting. Again, we've kind of seen it with his targets. He's getting red zone looks, so I think Dante Pettis is a terrific buy low. We do know that they want to run the ball, but the 49ers have the 6th easiest schedule for wide receivers moving forward, so I think there's a lot to like with Dante Pettis. I feel like he's probably somebody that you can get through waivers, or if somebody's holding him, maybe you want to make a trade as a bench stash, just to kind of see what happens here, because I think their schedule really opens up and is going to allow them to throw the ball more. And I think Dante Pettis could actually be a great post-hype sleeper.
Yeah, for sure. And Deebo Samuel's banged up now. They get the Cardinals twice still left on their schedule. Then if you look at their fantasy playoffs, they get the Saints, the Falcons, and the Rams weeks 14, 15, and 16. So, I mean, they need a wide receiver to step up. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they can just continue pounding the ball. And, little foreshadowing, I have the San Francisco 49er tight end as my buy for the rest of the season. But someone has to step up. Jalen Hurd went to IR. I think it was a back injury. I mean, Goodwin, they already talked about at the beginning of the year. They wanted to use him a little more sparingly. Kind of only throw him in certain situations and certain packages. So, I mean, Richie James isn't going to be your wide receiver one. There's a Trent Taylor, I think, is the other slot receiver they have there. So they got to have someone step up in that offense. And like I said, Kittle, he's my buy for the rest of the season for much of the same reasons that you were talking about with Pettis. And he frankly hasn't had that big Kittle week yet. He did have that better game against Cleveland, but I mean, I think he's tight end 7 or 8 right now, I think in half PPR scoring. So you might be able to get him on the cheap as well. And like I said, there's a super favorable schedule coming up, and he gets the Cardinals twice, which is just it's a free pass for tight ends out there. So
no, I think that's a good one. I mean, really this year, with especially with the elite tight ends, we haven't seen really a lot of boom weeks from them.
yeah.
A lot of the ones we've have been like, Darren Waller has been solid. We talked about Austin Hooper has. I mean, I don't think we could have talked about him anymore over the offseason as someone people could be buying. Like, we were team Austin Hooper. It's good to see how well he's played. He is the tight end one so far through the season and just continues to dominate. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Hooper, obviously has been great, but somebody like Kittle, who, or even, if you wanted to buy a Travis Kelce or something like that, because I mean, Kelce hasn't been great either.
Right.
Had some decent weeks, I guess for tight end standards, obviously hasn't been bad, but a lot of people invested second and third round picks in Travis Kelce. Certainly not giving that kind of value back, but I think some of that will just kind of play itself out throughout the rest of the year. But, getting Tyreek Hill back will make will affect this a lot, and I think will help. And then Sammy Watkins, once he returns, what sounds like definitely by next week, he should be back as well. So for me, my tight end, which I don't, want to continue to beat a dead horse, but it's Gerald Everett, third easiest schedule for tight ends. And again, like, I just think he's the real deal. I think we're going to continue to try to use him in the offense. The other one would be, I kind of like OJ Howard. They have the fourth easiest schedule for tight ends. And it's tough, right? But you could get OJ Howard right now for a 99-cent pack of sunflower seeds or something right now. Like, OJ Howard has been the stone cold bust among tight ends. I don't know if there's a tight end right now I could think of that is more of a bust than what he's been. Just been absolutely atrocious so far this year. I know last week in London, they kept talking about they really want to get him more involved. It almost at times looked like they were trying to force, or at least Jameis was trying to force the ball to him. But he's way too prolific, way too explosive for them to continue to not utilize him as a pass catcher. So I actually think OJ Howard is a decent, really buy low. Like, I mean, you could pretty much just probably offer anybody just about anything if he hasn't been dropped yet, especially heading into the bye. I feel like that OJ Howard is going to continue to mass drop. And I feel like that's somewhat of a mistake, especially at tight end. I mean, we've seen it. He can go from the stone cold worst tight end, have one big week, and be a tight end one. I mean, look at like Stephon Diggs last week, who was like wide receiver 58 or something like that, and now he's wide receiver 17. So a big week can sway a lot of that. But I do think that if you're looking for a tight end, you're just kind of playing matchups. Like, if you can stash Howard, or if you own him, like, I would not cut him, just because I feel like that upside is certainly there.
Yeah, like you were talking about, I just pulled it up on Yahoo. He's only 61% owned going into the bye week, and we still have another round of waivers to hit tomorrow. So that number can and probably will drop a little bit. While we're on the subject of tight ends, we did have a question from our free Slack community. So guys, make sure you're jumping in there. But Declan Delahunty, hope I'm pronouncing that right, man. He wanted to know Darren Waller or Hunter Henry rest of season.
That one is super tough because like I think both of them are great options. And I guess one question I would ask is one, is this a league where you can start 2 tight ends? Because as much as that disgusting as that is to do on most weeks, I think having both of those is interesting. If I had to just stake my claim to it right now, I think it would be Hunter Henry. But I don't know, but I would not be surprised one bit if it's Darren Waller, just because we talked about there's nobody there. And I think that is certainly something that benefits him. And we saw how much of a smash play it was for Jared Cook last year. So I think this is tough, but I certainly think it would be Hunter Henry. But which one you'd rather not keep, at the very least, I think you could look at trading one of them.
Sounds like you're living a little bit of that hedge life there, brother.
A little, but no. But
I completely agree.
For me, it's Hunter Henry, but I think it's close. And again, whichever one you decided not trade, and maybe Hunter Henry would be the easier one to move, and maybe you could get more for, especially the big week he's coming off of because recency bias. I would have no problem with trading Hunter Henry if you wanted to do so, if you can get something solid in return.
No, I completely agree. And this is one of those things that I've said a couple of times on the podcast. This is just one of those situations where you're going to have 3, 4, 5 teams in your league hurting for tight end. So this is one of those situations where just go to the message board or your group text or whatever you have for your leagues, and you say both of these guys are on the block rather. I'm going to trade one of them, and you see who you get the highest return for. Because I really don't think you can go wrong either. Like, they're both going to be heavily targeted in the offenses that they're in. I would just go by. I mean, either you hold on to them and you play them both every week, or you like I said, put them on the block and let your league create a bidding war inside of itself and see the return you can get.
Especially for like someone like Darren Waller, who you likely didn't invest nothing into, somebody you probably added on waivers and has turned into kind of a little diamond in the rough here. Yeah,
for sure. He was either a waiver pickup or you watched Hard Knocks and you're like, I'll take him in round 17.
Yeah, for sure. So again, another question we have was from Matt Giraldi, which I guess we already kind of touched on. Will next week be the last week chance to buy low on Robbie Anderson?
Yeah, he was right there with you as far as wanting Anderson, and he was talking a little bit in the Dynasty channel that we have for the Slack, and we were both just saying that we were disappointed that Robbie blew up last week because he was someone that we were both looking at and hopefully buying low on. So, yeah, he was just coming from the angle of the matchup they have with the Pats and everything else. So if Anderson does get shut down, I would definitely be going out and trying to buy him.
No, 100%. I think I've said that enough already this pod. From Rab Johel, would you trade away Mark Ingram for Stephon Diggs and Will Fuller? His running backs are Chris Carson, David Johnson, and Matt Breida. Wide receivers are Sammy Watkins, Juju, Larry Fitzgerald, and Chris Godwin.
Yeah, I'd make that trade, especially considering his wide receiver situation there. Fitzgerald, he's solid. You can count on him, but he hasn't really had any boom weeks. Chris Godwin, I mean, I really don't think we have to – you want to talk about another guy we were talking about the entire offseason, that's one of them. We know what he's doing. Juju you can't trust, and unfortunately after week 1 with Sammy, now he's injured. Like you said, he should be back next week, but he's still not going to be someone that you can rely on a week-to-week basis. So I'm really hoping, like we said, I think either last week or week before, that with this performance from Kirk Cousins the past couple of weeks, that Pappy Zimmer finally lets go a little bit and puts more passing plays in for that offense, because Kirk Cousins look good. I mean, obviously the matchups haven't been crazy, but he's definitely been getting it done. And Will Fuller went from DFS hero to being Will Fuller again. I think he dropped 3 touchdown passes last week. So I mean, that's kind of what you're going to get with Will Fuller. But like I said, I don't mind having one of those guys on my, on my team for situations where you're looking for a little bit of a higher ceiling on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, it's always tough, I think, trading away a running back for wide receivers, but I think the depth that he has is solid. Chris Carson, David Johnson, Matt Breida. I think if I owned David Johnson, though, and Chase Edmonds was out there, like, it would be hard. I would definitely look to add Chase Edmonds with David Johnson. He did not practice today. He's still dealing with something with his back, so it didn't really seem to affect him last week. David Johnson had a big game last week, especially through the air. So, but yeah, I mean, it's tough, but I think I would definitely still make that trade. I think the value you're getting back in return outweighs what you're getting from Mark Ingram. So yeah, I think I would make that move. So, so yeah, that is the last question we have. Again, reach out to us on Twitter to join our Slack channel. It's just been great all year. We continue to grow. Our DFS Slack is going any day. There's a game. And leading up to it as well. There's a bunch of people in there. We're always talking. It's not just DFS. We have a redraft channel. We have a dynasty channel, as he mentioned. So if you play dynasty leagues, there's a bunch of people in there. Just, if you have a question, you just post it in there. You're guaranteed somebody's going to answer it for you. We've created other channels, but this is just a great community. I know a lot of times on Twitter, you'll be reaching out to people, maybe ask to start sit or a trade question. A lot of people want to answer you, or maybe they don't even give you much advice. Maybe it's just like yes or no, or start name and don't really tell you why. And it doesn't really help you to understand of where your mindset is or why you would do that. I think being in this community where people will go much deeper and further with you. And it's more of, like I said, just a community of people talking about football. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, it's free to join. Just reach out to us on Twitter at FantasyWrath13 and we can get you a link, or on our Twitter. There's definitely places. There's links on there. You just click the link and join. Yeah, like I said, it's all free. If you don't like it, fine. You can leave. It's fine. We don't need you. But anyways, other than that, do you have anything else that you want to talk about this week?
No, man. I think I'm all set. Just like I said, looking forward to getting into this week and not thinking about the deer that I crushed with my car. So
maybe that's an omen. Maybe you should just go all in. See, I don't play GPP, so I don't understand the cash game life. Like that's all. All I play is GPPs. I do not understand cash. I have never played. I think I may have entered like one, maybe I'll probably be generous. That's probably 4 or 5, maybe most cash game lineups in my entire life, and it's just not my thing. I'm much more of a GPP guy. Now, what I will say is, especially for people that maybe your team's 1-5, you're just having a rough year, and you want to continue playing some fantasy football, getting into some DFS is the way to do it. But like, I think being smart about it, like staying away from the $3 that's like $100,000 to first is not the way to do it. There's like 400,000 people in there. Stay away from that. Go to the $5 that's a 3 entry max. Go to the $3 single entry if that's what you want to play. Like, you don't have to play big money to play DFS and have some fun with it and make some money at it too. So I think you're much better off by playing those kind of contests, because one, you're not entering against a bunch of sharks who are just slamming in all their their 150 lineup trade that they're going to hit you with. And I just think it kind of levels the playing field a little bit more. It may, you may never become a millionaire. You're not going to win the millie by that, but you have a much better chance of a good solid ROI. And I think it's just better theory and better practice to go that route than it is to try to just hammer stuff. So again, like I said, join our Slack channel, check out all the work we have. Solid work going up on the website, and whether it's DFS, whether it's redraft or whatever. This week Cody put out a solid solid waiver ad article. We're gonna have a couple of guests on next week. A couple of our riders are gonna be on here. Nate and Ryan Murphy. They're putting out a lot of great work with their target and running back touches pieces each week. So
yep.
Like I said, I don't know. Do you have anything else?
No, man. just getting the chats. You were talking about the DFS channel, on game day, really being active. But even on Tuesday, I think it was Corey who sent out a message asking if anybody looked at the Thursday night showdown slate yet. So the DFS channels, there's always something going on in there. And like you were saying, Kev, if you're out of it, never been in never really played FanDuel or DraftKings, just jump in that chat and there's always people, whether it's one of us or Ryan or even just some of the members in there that are really active that'll, definitely take the time and help walk you through and give you some theories and tips and pointers and stuff, man. That chat's been a lot of fun this year.
No, for sure. And it's always good on, Sunday nights or after a showdown contest when everyone starts posting their lineups in there and they're green. They won. So no, it's been a good time. And also on Thursday nights, which is tomorrow night, you can check out the DFS DJ Nation podcast, where we do the same thing, except for we break down, go through position by position for the main slate. And actually this week we'll have our longtime guest, or not guest, but longtime host who's been on, but he's going to be back on tomorrow, which is Matt Dickinson. So
nice.
That should be a lot of fun to have us three back on. So for the Fantasy Authority, you can find us on Twitter at FF_authority, or you can find me on Twitter personally at FantasyRat13, but I'm sure you're probably already following me and everything. So or you can find Cody at CKutzerFF. And again, until next week, hit us up and for the Slack channel, and hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Helps us grow. Leave us a review. You can tell me how bad my takes are. It's fine. I have thick skin. And we all need to improve somehow, but whatever. So anyways, have a great night, and we will talk to you next week.